Welcome, Climate Viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com. It's November 8th, 2021. And I'm going to talk a little bit about jet fuel and geoengineering. I get this question all the time. It's been a while since we visited the subject. And I finally completed the new weathermodificationhistory.com version 2.0. So we're going to take a beautiful look at one of these posts and dig ourselves in deep. If you're new to the channel, if you're watching this elsewhere, hop over to YouTube and despite your gurgling stomach, please hit that subscribe button and the bell. And if you can, support me on Patreon with a monthly donation. It's only $2, man. Help a brother out. Regardless, boy, the new weathermodificationhistory.com is absolutely beautiful. It is the world's largest, most thorough place to find out all about these topics, and I hope that you guys will dig into it. We're going to talk about jet fuel today and geoengineering with it and what the scientists are saying, what's coming out of their mouths, not mine, not other people's, just the facts, and we're going to dig into it pretty deeply. So if you're new to weathermodificationhistory.com, you can literally just come down here to the timeline, hit view timeline. It's also up here on the menu bar. Click on the timeline and you can scroll through all of these beautiful posts. You can sort them by geoengineering, weather modification, or space weather modification. Today we're going to be talking about just artificial clouds, which you can click tags, you can click artificial clouds, and it will only show you the posts about this cloud conundrum we've been having. Renee in chat, we will be talking about rocket fuel and rocket trails and upper atmospheric chemical releases in an upcoming video. I hope to do one on metals specifically from not just jets, but also rockets in the near future. Jimbo, Jimmy, James, Jimothy, I've been called worse. Temsy. Anyway, we're going to get right into this right now. So the post for today, the post du jour is geoengineering with sulfur, jet fuel, and commercial aviation. Make this just a little larger for everybody playing along in the video. And we're just going to go through the history. This is all just from one post. Everything is referenced at the bottom. We're going to go through these real quickly. Hope that you can keep up. But, oh, wait, there's already notes taken for you, so that shouldn't be too hard. And you can find all of this on weathermodificationhistory.com. I will pin this post in details afterwards. So, some of you have probably already heard of stratospheric Wells bag seeding for the reduction of global warming. And this was actually a patent, as you can see right here, stratospheric Wells bag seeding for the reduction of global warming, U.S. patent 5003186A. It's from 1991. It originally was assigned to Douglas Air, and now it's assigned to Raytheon, interestingly enough. All of these references are text, so you can just right-click them, hit go to, or copy-paste them, and you can actually see the original patents for yourself, and you can see that now it is assigned to Raytheon. Originally, it was assigned to Hughes Aircraft Company or Corporation, and now Raytheon, and it actually says anticipated expiration date of 2010. So it looks like it's actually expired, interestingly enough, although this is still one of the most widely cited chemtrail references out there. We'll just ignore that for now. So in this patent, it said these particles may be seeded and dispersed by seeding aircraft. One exemplary technique may be via the jet fuel as suggested by a prior work regarding metallic particles. Now, this is interesting. So we're talking about in a previous work, which could either be a publication or a patent, that somebody talked about dispersing metal particles via jet fuel, 1991. Now we're going to hop ahead to 1998. First direct sulfuric acid detection in the exhaust plume of a jet aircraft in flight. And it said that the sulfuric acid signatures were the same as when they were injected directly into the exhaust jet, and the case where sulfur was provided to the engine with the fuel. So whether they actually pumped the sulfuric acid into the exhaust, or whether they added sulfur to the jet fuel, same result. So this is the pipes and pumps versus jet fuel side of the chemtrail theory conspiracy. Is it pumps and pipes? Is it in the jet fuel? We're gonna flip flop. We're gonna ride that fence all the way down this thing, as you'll see. 2002, influence of fuel sulfur on the composition of aircraft exhaust plumes. The experiments sulfur 1 through 7, and they actually tested to determine the particle and contrail formation properties of aircraft exhaust plumes for different fuel sulfur content and atmospheric conditions. So this was specifically a test. Ulrich Schumann was a part of these tests to test exactly what the effects of fuel sulfur content on cloud formation were. And again, any one of these, click number 3. You're going to pop down here. You'll see Ulrich Schumann et al. In the Journal of Geophysical Research, Atmosphere, and a link to the original paper. And that is the case for all of these, as you're going to see. And for those who don't know about DOI, or DOI.org, this is the international referencing way that scientists use to link to stuff. So it's kind of like a short URL that'll send you to the place. So you're not actually going to go to DOI.org. When you click this, it's going to kick you to the original publication, which is agupubs.onlinelibrary.wiley.com, blah, 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 blah. As you can see, it's published 2002, and they have their DOI link. DOI. We're going to go back now. Real nerd stuff. Just having nerd fun with this, okay? So next up, we have the big one. Now, as I say, the big one, this is one most people have never heard of. But if you're a scientist, especially if you're a geoengineering scientist, this is the big one, because they have a Nobel Prize winning author who basically gave them a pat on the back saying, go ahead with this idea to put sulfur in the air. Albedo enhancement by stratospheric sulfur injections, a contribution to resolve a policy dilemma, ? Now, let me see if I can blow it up even bigger, because we're having trouble reading this at home. All right, here we go. That's even better. Although climate cooling by sulfate aerosols also occurs in the troposphere. For those who don't remember, troposphere, that's where we live, down here at the bottom, underneath the plains, and everything above that. You got stratosphere and then the mesosphere. We are in the troposphere, so that's the bottom layer. That's what they're talking about right there. Although climate cooling by sulfate aerosols also occurs in the troposphere, the great advantage of placing reflective particles in the stratosphere is their long residence time of about 1 to 2 years compared to a week in the troposphere. Thus, much less sulfur, only a few % would be required in the stratosphere to achieve similar cooling as the tropospheric sulfate aerosol. This is the reason why geoengineers want to put sulfur into the stratosphere, because it'll stay up there for 1 to 2 years versus a week if it's down here, because it's going to rain out as what? Sulfuric acid as what? Acid rain. Acid rain's not something you hear about anymore. You only hear about ocean acidification. When I was growing up in school, I'm 45, turned 45 on November 4th. It was my birthday. It's still my birthday week. Back when I was in high school, acid rain was something that was talked about all the time. You don't hear about acid rain anymore. Just a thing. But as you can see, if you put sulfur into the stratosphere, it lasts for 1 to 2 years. The same is true of the metal particles that we're going to talk about in the next video. Jumping ahead, 2008, William Cotton gave a presentation at the Weather Modification Conference that's held it's biannually, so every 2 years at the American Meteorological Society. I attended the one in 2018. But in 2008, William Cotton, who was of Project Storm Fury fame, who I also interviewed in 2018. You can actually watch my interview with him. Pretty fascinating guy. He had a video presentation where he said, use commuter aircraft with their jet fuels doped with aerosol generators. Don't believe me? Here we go. It's over to my YouTube channel.
That would lead to a cooling effect in that. Cost, I wouldn't even begin to attempt that. It's really quite costly. I mean, there's no question about it. We have to be really in a pack of trouble if we have to go to them. I said here we could use perhaps commuter aircraft with the jet fuels doped with aerosols and that. UAVs or blimps and that.
UAV blimps and that. He's just basically hitting his points from his own PowerPoint. But yeah, there's the original video and all of the links according to that from the American Meteorological Society. And of course, references provided. But this is from his actual PDF presentation. He goes a little deeper into it. And he says the only approach that might be feasible is to perform wide area seeding with soot or carbonaceous aerosols, which would absorb solar radiation and warm cirrus layers enough to perhaps dissipate cirrus clouds. This is a really complicated topic right here, but what he's basically saying is that if we were to seed using aircraft, seed the sky using soot or carbonaceous. That's an interesting one now. We're talking about like calcium carbonate. This is another one of those things that they're talking about geoengineering with, that it would absorb solar radiation because soot is black and black absorbs heat, and warm cirrus layers enough to dissipate the cirrus clouds. So whenever the chemtrail, contrail, plane fart, whatever you want to call it, the linear contrails fan out and become cirrus clouds, they trap heat. That's a problem. And by melting them away, they could also deal with that geoengineering issue, what they like to call accidental geoengineering. Won't get into that. But regardless, it's a real fascinating piece if you want to read that. All links at the bottom. 2009, modification of cirrus clouds to reduce global warming. A potential delivery mechanism for seeding material is already in place. The airline industry. Pretty darn direct right there. And how? They say dissolved or suspended in their jet fuel and later burned with the fuel to create seeding aerosol, or the other alternative method, injected into the hot engine exhaust, which should vaporize the seeding material. So is it the jet fuel, pipes or pumps, jet fuel tank? Pipes or pumps, jet fuel tank. Which is it? Which one do you think it is? Let me know in the comments. Pipes or pumps, jet fuel tank. Let me know. 2009, benefits, risks, and costs of stratospheric geoengineering. Options for dispersing gases from a plane include addition of sulfur to the fuel or attachment of a nozzle to release the sulfur from within its own tank within the plane. This is Alan Robach and Ben Kravitz and a couple other guys. Benefits, risks, and costs of stratospheric geoengineering. Pumps or pipes? Jet fuel tank. Let me know what you think in the comments. Efficient formation of stratospheric aerosols for climate engineering by emission of condensable vapor from aircraft. Bro, they come up with some hellified titles. That's all I know. Hellified titles. Here we describe an alternate method in which aerosols are formed rapidly in the plume following injection of H2SO4 sulfuric acid, a condensable vapor from an aircraft. We explored the possibility of forming sulfate aerosols in an aircraft plume by emissions of sulfuric acid vapor rather than SO2, depending on the injection method. SO3 vapor may be emitted rather than sulfuric acid, but it is quickly converted to sulfuric acid. What he said. And who said that? Jeffrey Pierce said that. A lot of them coming from geophysical research letters. Interesting. Moving back up. 2013 stratospheric passenger flights are likely an inefficient geoengineering strategy. Here we have somebody poo-pooing on the entire idea, saying, you know what? Probably not a good idea. Here we show that using stratospheric passenger flights to inject sulfate aerosols would not cause significant forcing under realistic injection scenarios, even if all present-day intercontinental flights were lifted above the tropopause. Back off, fly. There's going to be a murder on video. They love my lights. They're attracted to the lights. Somebody give me a fly laser beam. So I'm giving the alternative perspective here. This is a paper specifically saying, look, all this idea of putting sulfur into jet fuel, bad idea, not going to work. That's right. In chat, the sulfur 1 through 7 were done alongside the exact same time that the plus 100 HITS additive or high thermal stability additive and the NATO single fuel concept was being rolled out of converting all of NATO flights from JP5, which was gasoline, to JP8, which is diesel / kerosene, somewhere in between. Interesting. Good points right there in chat. So 2014, we have the alternative fuel effects on contrails and cruise emissions, or access to flight experiment. Now, this is where biofuels for contrail control come in, and we have the idea that 3 different fuel types are discussed: a low sulfur JP8 fuel, a 50-50 blend of JP8 and camelina based HEFA fuel or biofuel. So it's a half and half JP8, half biofuel, and a JP8 fuel doped with sulfur. Now, is that a coincidence? You tell me. Let me know in the comments. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe I'm just paranoid. What do I know? 2015, the Academy of Finland's FICA Cool Project. The Cool Project. Another technique examined was the use of commercial passenger aircraft flying at high altitudes to inject sulfate aerosols emitted by aviation into the stratosphere. The FICA Cool Project. Interestingly enough, if you come down here and you scroll on past these and you go to the pictures, this is from the FICA Cool Project. And what you'll actually see is stratospheric sulfate injections with commercial aircraft. Commercial aircraft could be used to deliver sulfate into the stratosphere by increasing fuel sulfur content and flight altitude of intercontinental flights. The fuel sulfur content of the fuel would need to be increased about 50 times the current level to have significant cooling effect. The cooling effect would be confined to the northern hemisphere. So boom, boom, boom. It's only going to get cooler in the northern hemisphere. And all you brown people and you Aussies as well, y'all are going to fry like bacon. By the way, that's also going to change rainfall patterns on a worldwide basis. Bad news. Bad bears, bad news. Moving back along. Commercial aircraft could be used, and this is a quote from that. Okay, anyway. 2015, and this is one of the papers that really gets me. So applying high fuel sulfur content at aviation cruise altitude combined with ultra low sulfur jet fuel at lower altitudes results in a reduced aviation induced mortality and increased negative RE compared to the baseline aviation scenario. Now, this one's kind of complicated, so I included a translation, which is always helpful. Use biofuels on takeoff, create less carbon black dust soot around airports, kill less people. At 2, use high sulfur jet fuel at altitude, mimic Pinatubo effect to do stratospheric sulfur injections for solar radiation management purposes. Pretty simple. So this brings up a real interesting question. If they're talking about using 2 different fuels, one on takeoff, and then one once you get up to altitude, how the hell do you do that? That was the question I asked myself. You may be asking yourself that. So I looked into that, and what do you know? I found a whole bunch of different patents. And you can see them here, and the patent numbers are here. And it says right here that, this is a control unit that's adapted for supplying a second fuel to the internal combustion engine. Wait, let's back up. Let's read this, because now I'm going, holy crap. A control unit is adapted for being connected to at least one first supply apparatus for supplying a first fuel to the internal combustion engine, and at least one second supply apparatus for supplying a second fuel to the internal combustion engine. 2 fuels, 1 plane. Big plane farts. Another patent. Determining a resultant fuel composition for the use by a machine in the ambient air condition to achieve the characteristic where resultant fuel composition includes at least one of the first and second fuel compositions. 2 fuels for contrail control. Interesting. Here's another one. Defines... It says right here, the second signal, 80, defines a percentage of at least one of the first fuel composition and second fuel composition required to produce a resultant fuel composition. And what does all this have to do with? I'm going to go down here and get to the bottom. These are the patents right here. Control unit and method of controlling the supply of a vehicle with multiple fuels, 2013. Fuel delivery system 2014 and fuel system 2016. And you can see that these 2 are actually Rolls-Royce, which makes jet engines, and Airbus operations. And Airbus is a commercial aviation, planes from the UK, in Europe. So there's that, combined with the fact that these are what the pictures look like. So it was called fuel system, and if you actually read all the way through it, for vapor trail control, they actually have sensors on here to detect what the trails look like, and they show the different tanks that would contain the different fuels. These are just facts, man. This is not your conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, science theater. This is conspira fact. These are the facts. I'm just giving them to you. You're going to make the determination. You're going to let me know in the comments. Am I full of crap? Am I a conspiratard? Am I a chemtard? Or are we on to something here? Because it looks like we're on to something here. And here they show the ice supersaturated regions to fuel delivery system and how they want to either avoid them because they might warm the climate, or let's fly right through that sumbitch and make a bunch of freezing clouds, because that's going to be good for geoengineering purposes. And then finally, control unit and method for controlling a supply of vehicle with multiple fuels. And in it, they show the Jet Fuel Electronic Control Unit, ECU, and they've got it's all numbered here. Here's the fuel in the wings, and here's some other, fuel parts, and we can use different fuels and control all that electronically. And by the way, this could all be done by remote control. Pilot has nothing to do with it. It could be done from the FAA headquarters. Okay? From the FAA headquarters. No, nobody even has to get involved here. And these are the videos. And I actually have covered this previously. As you can see here, biofuel enlisted for contrail control. And maybe we'll get into biofuels in another video. So that every post on weathermodificationhistory.com not only includes some pictures to go along with it, but videos as well. And you can just flip through those, and then it shows the next post and the last post right underneath it. And you can leave your comments. So please do leave comments on the page itself. If any of these links are broken, when you go to check these, you can always come right down here and drop them in here and check archive.org for them as well. I'm telling you, this new weathermodificationhistory.com, I spent 1.5 years working on this thing. So if that's not worth one of these, I don't know what is, but I'd greatly appreciate it. You know, just saying, this is all free. It's all Creative Commons. So help a brother out, man. Constantly working on this. So this brings us back to the question, you know, how do we get from, you know, all of this to this current geoengineered sky that we're dealing with? And before we get into this next subject real quick, I'm going to check my climate nerves thing right here. And no, I don't have it there. So it's under streaming, under videos, under contrail avoidance, and there. This is from my last video because we're going to need this in just a second, just so we can bring that up. Okay. Needed to get that out there real quick. And we'll bring the video up as well, just so we can, you know, I might as well pimp my other video, right? So yeah, I just made a video about this. Less contrails, more geoengineering, and a contrail carbon tax. Contrail avoidance may increase ice haze geoengineering. Going to talk about that because it ties in with what we're about to talk about. So what does this all have to do with the current, you know, understanding of the scientific world on this whole topic? Soot and carbon black carries sulfur into the stratosphere, destroys ozone layer, affects rainfall and monsoons worldwide. Now, I've showed this picture a couple times. I actually embedded it directly in the article. And what you get is, you get kind of a creepy feeling when you read these quotes. Because Ulrich Schumann said in 2010, we want less warming and more cooling contrails predictable for operational planning. When I interviewed the head of the FAA's Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative, Dr. Rangasai Halthori, he said, we would like to have more contrail-induced cirrus clouds during the day and none during the night. And Ulrich Lohmann and Blas Gasparini said in a cirrus cloud climate dial that this can be achieved if seeding is limited to high latitude winters and nighttime seeding, referring to cirrus cloud seeding or cirrus cloud thinning. But what they're not accounting for is the fact that planes typically fly near the tropopause. This was mentioned earlier in the article when we were talking about it, and they said even if all of these planes flew near the tropopause, it just wouldn't be enough, man. If every single plane on the planet did it, it wouldn't be enough to geoengineer, dog. I don't know what you're getting so huffy about. But the thing is, even if they're not flying above the tropopause, meaning they're not flying in the troposphere, they are now flying into the stratosphere. That even though they're not, the exhaust that's coming out of these planes is filled with soot, and the soot is filled with metals, and the soot is wrapped in sulfuric acid, and all of that is ending up in the stratosphere anyway. And I will prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt right now. So we're going to take a step back just for a second so we could take a step forward, because everybody's favorite guy to throw a dart at, David Keith, geoengineer-in-chief, said in his paper 2010, Photophoretic Levitation of Engineered Aerosols for Geoengineering, that photophoretic levitation could loft particles above the stratosphere, reducing their capacity to interfere with ozone chemistry. Now, what this is, photophoresis is the idea that, like what I said with soot, that because soot ends up taking in heat, that it could self-levitate, that it actually could get warmer and go up. And here he talks about creating an engineered nanoparticle to do photophoretic levitation for solar geoengineering. What either he already knew, or maybe it was just a coincidence. Let me know in the comments. David Keith was talking about what soot is doing now. Soot, or carbon black dust, black carbon, pretty synonymous. There's a lot of idiot scientists that use these interchangeably. They don't know what they're talking about. They'll either call it soot, carbon black dust, or black carbon. There is a difference. Most of these scientists don't understand it well enough, and they use them interchangeably. But regardless, we're just going to say soot for the sake of keeping it simple, stupid. Soot is going up into the stratosphere, as shown in this picture. So, aircraft exhaust, soot is a cloud seed. Soot transports sulfur into the stratosphere. Sulfur and soot destroy the ozone layer. Metals in soot make cirrus clouds. Cirrus clouds cool during the daytime. Solar radiation management. Cirrus clouds trap heat at night. Earth radiation management. Also, one time referred to as TRM instead of ERM, thermal radiation management. Something many of you probably have never heard. But regardless, that's a thing. So David Keith, 2010, mentions engineering an aerosol to lift things from the troposphere into the stratosphere. And that's the case. I rarely do this, but I'm going to just because this comment's too priceless. Bill Bradley says, I've asked Suspicious Observer to check out Jim Lee's work and websites. SO says geoengineering isn't far enough along to create or affect weather. He thinks he's smart. Wrong. Now, I want you to know this from the bottom of my heart. Back in 2012, I knew him and Dutchens very well. And I won't get into the personal details of why I met SO and why I know him personally in the way that I do. But he basically told me that I didn't have a college degree, therefore I were stupid. And that I have not forgotten. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. We are the climate viewers. And I appreciate you guys for sticking with me so long. And caring about the facts. Because the facts is really all that matters at the end of the day. Facts don't care about your feelings. So, what are the facts of this situation? What are the facts of this accidental geoengineering experiment? Well, the Indian Space Organization blew the lid off of all of this. God bless them. And I'm going to read this whole thing because it's that damn priceless. Black carbon particles from aviation exist up to 18 kilometers into the stratosphere. 18 kilometers. Oh, Jim Lee, you are far from stupid. I know that. Do you need a college degree to understand these things? No. There is nothing on this planet that you can do, that you can't do without a college education. Anybody in this chat can do what I'm doing because everything I'm done, from learning graphics to 3D graphics to modeling video games, to working with Pixar, Disney, Industrial Light and Magic, to teaching myself to design websites, to making this beautiful freaking website you're seeing, to teaching myself how to stream, and finally having a setup that's decent. I've seen some pretty rich, absolutely rich motherfuckers on TV, and these guys can't figure out how to Zoom call into Fox and CNN, but I'm able to figure all this out, so you are too. That's the point. Everything you need to learn about this topic, I have put it here for you, and you might be the one to take it to the next level. And I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for my replacement. I'm waiting to see the next person who's just another guy who's got a high school diploma who decided to read a damn thing. And then when they didn't understand a word, they went and they looked up the definition of the word. And then they came back and said, okay, now this actually makes sense to me. Because after a decade of doing this, I will go toe to toe with any scientist, any meteorologist, anybody on the planet in a debate, and hands down, I will hand them their booty red. And you can too. All you need to do is read it. You put the work in, understand the topic, you'll be able to explain it better than me. And I expect that from every single one of you climate viewers. So get your asses to work now. That's an order. All right, so black carbon particles from aviation exist up to 18 kilometers in the stratosphere. 2017. Airplanes may be ejecting significant amounts of black carbon. I told you it's used interchangeably. Soot, black carbon, carbon black dust. A pollutant known to aggravate breathing disorders. What did I tell you about killing people around airports? Less soot around airports, more sulfur at altitude. Just circling back, doing a circle back. Got to circle back. A pollutant known to aggravate breathing disorders, upset the monsoon, and quicken glacier melt, and may be depleting ozone layer, according to a study by climate researchers from multiple institutions in the country of India. Though airborne, black carbon is known to dissipate and settle down in a few months under the influence of rain and wind, and is unlikely to travel upwards of 4 kilometers. However, a group of scientists, including from the Indian Institute of Science at the ISRO's Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, say they now have evidence of such particles existing up to 18 kilometers in the stratosphere, and there are about 10,000 of them in every cubic centimeter. I want that one to sink in. This is your smoking gun for anybody who's ever wanted to say, none of this is happening. This is not happening. This big ice haze you're seeing, that ice haze is the real geoengineering. It's not the clouds. It's not these guys even. These are ugly. And I don't like this. Okay? This pisses me off. I don't like seeing plane farts. I don't like seeing planes block out the sun. I want my grandchildren to be able to see the stars. But the real geoengineering is this. So let's be real. It's the ice haze. And that's what nobody's talking about. So let's go back here. So up to 18 kilometers in the sky. Let's do the chart again over here. Okay. So the tropopause is at 12 kilometers. Okay. Or at about 39,000 feet, which is also 7.38 miles. There, I did them all. But at 18 kilometers, they're finding particles that came from planes that are black carbon, which are filled with metals and coated in sulfuric acid. That is the definition of stratospheric aerosol injection. That the ozone layer exists from 15 to 35 kilometers, depending on the time of the year. That's 9 to 22 miles. That the Indian Space Institute of Science said, we found these at 18 kilometers, which is between 15 and 35 kilometers, which is where the ozone layer is, which is a bad thing, which contains about 10,000 of these particles in every cubic centimeter of the sky. This should be the screaming wake-up call, the shot heard around the world, but nobody wants to talk about it. Dane Wigington has shown nozzles fitted on Boeing planes in his new documentary. Oh yeah, that documentary called The Dimming. The Dimming. I've been contemplating doing a live watching session of The Dimming. It's 2 hours long though, and I don't know if I can hold my food down that long. and I'll probably need several like bathroom breaks to either pee myself or, throw up. But Dane Wigington literally is the poster child of misinformation and using things incorrectly. He literally has a picture that he shows in almost every damn video that he makes of a wake vortex test, which is when you make a new plane and you actually attach smoke generators to the wings so that you can see the vortexes created behind the wings. And then he shows that picture to people and says, see, proof of geoengineering. And then he shows pumps and pipes inside the planes, which are ballast tanks, which are to simulate fat people moving around inside of a plane rapidly. So they pump water from one tank at the back of the plane up to the next tank, up to the next tank, all the way to the front of the plane rapidly to simulate weight moving around in a plane to see if they could make the plane flip over, because you wouldn't want that happening. So there's a lot of disinformation out there. I've been through it all. And that's why my problem is discerning fact from fiction. And though I may agree with a lot of the things that Dane Wigington says, it's the blatant that he knows are these. He knows for a fact that some of the stuff that, at least some of the stuff he's using, is just absolute horseshit. That he has been discredited multiple times by multiple scientific outlets, that they censor him on everything, put up this is known bullshit flags on Facebook because it is known bullshit. And that some of the people in his video literally tried to have sex with me. I'm just going to, there, I said it. Okay. We're going to move along. Well, one of his whistleblowers literally tried to have sex with me when I was like, hey, I've got the thing that you were looking for that you said that you needed. I can actually provide that to you. They were like, you're cute. And I'm like, I'm married. And they were like, but you're cute. And I'm like, but I thought you was a whistleblower. And but you're, why don't you holler at your girl? And I'm like, why don't you go away? Ew. I'm married like 22 freaking years. Anyway. Don't bring up Dane Wigington around here. Y'all gonna get me triggered. All these other wannabes. Given the shape and location of these particles, they argue it could only derive these emissions were from aviation fuel. So the only possibility that these soot particles got into the stratosphere is that they came from jet fuel. From jet exhaust. Period. Point blank. No other way around it. And then finally, 2017, possible climatic implications of high altitude black carbon emissions. This is the actual scientific paper where they, this is an article, obviously, where they said, ozone might be affected. And the other one right here, this is from the Hindu Times. Airplanes may be affecting ozone layer. The other one is the actual scientific paper. For those that want the facts and want to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, possible climatic implications of high altitude black carbon emissions. And this is just the facts. Now, I bring this up because, with all this talk about geoengineering the sky, and, how David Keith said that, we could do photophoretic levitation of engineered aerosols for geoengineering. And that the Indian Space Organization said, but wait, that shit's already happening. And then we hop ahead to the video I just made on contrail avoidance. And in here they say contrails, how tweaking flight plans can help the climate. And in it, Ken Caldera, right about here, Kenneth Caldera, geoengineer dude. Professor Ken Caldera from the Carnegie Institute of Science makes a compelling case. He estimates preventing most of the damaging climate impacts of contrails will cost less than $1 billion a year, and the net value of the benefit could be more than 1,000 times that. We know of no comparable climate investment with a similar high likelihood of success. And what they are literally talking about is making the planes fly 1,000 feet higher to avoid making contrails. What that will not do is avoid the other big problem, related timeline entries. If you ever see this section, it's there for a reason. Commercial aviation creating ice haze and accidental geoengineering, as they like to call it. And in it, it's called clear sky brightening. So if you want to know more about this, that Chuck Long said that they are making ice haze. And what he's referring to is, I'm talking about a subvisual contrail generated haze of ice, which we do not classify as a cloud, but gives a blue sky a more whitish tint. So from his own post, you can see here, evidence of clear sky daylight whitening. Are we already conducting geoengineering? He tested, what the effects of sunlight and all of this were on the ice haze that's being generated by planes. He shows a sundog. Trigger warning for those who don't know anything about this sort of thing, but that's a sundog, and that sundog is created by an ice haze, and that ice haze is created by all the soot going from the troposphere up into the stratosphere, where Paul Crutzen said it would live for 1 to 2 years. So every day that planes are flying, they're putting more and more soot particles into the sky, which are filled with metals like aluminum, titanium, barium, strontium, selenium, calcium, molybdenum. The list goes on. I will go into all of these metals and their contents in the next video. But all of these metals are in the soot that are going up into the stratosphere. They are wrapped in sulfuric acid. Can prove this too. And that all of that is getting transported into the stratosphere, where it is creating a subvisual ice haze, which is whitening the sky. If you didn't watch my previous video, I suggest you do, because I go into much greater detail about this. But like I've been told by many people and experienced it myself, it is getting brighter out there, and your future's so bright, you're gonna need shades. And that seems to be the plan. And especially when you talk about this new Contrails tweaking flight plans to just fly a little higher. Well, if you fly a little higher, we can put those chemicals even higher into the stratosphere, even if planes aren't flying in the stratosphere. And all of it can just come right out of the jet fuel. Or is it pumps and pipes? Or is it jet fuel? Is it pumps and pipes? Jet fuel? Let me know in the comments. I have yet to find any evidence. And by evidence, I mean something I could take into a court of law, something I could have taken to the EPA hearing when I went to Washington, D.C. and spoke on C-SPAN about this topic. Evidence. Not something that could easily be discredited, something I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. I have never found evidence of pumps and pipes on commercial flights. That does not mean that the CIA or the Chinese or the Russians aren't geoengineering, because what they do in secret will remain secret and probably be secret till we're all on our deathbed. And then after all the people who did it are dead and gone, they'll release it. And then you'll be going, I knew they were doing that. Do you have time for that? I don't have the time for that. So I'm going to work with what I can prove today. And what I can prove today beyond a shadow of a doubt is that planes are farting all over the sky. All of that is ending up in the stratosphere, is affecting rainfall on a worldwide basis. It is destroying our ozone layer. It is pissing me and a lot of you off. And by the way, they're making a whole bunch of artificial clouds. So that is my video for today on geoengineering jet fuel with commercial aviation. Let me know in the comments what you think. What am I missing? Am I just crazy? Is there more to the story? Do you have more evidence? If you can show me evidence I haven't seen in the last, now literally like 12 years, more than a decade of studying this topic, searching. Every single finger points back to the jet fuel tank. And of course, there's that whole jet fuel's a hoax. Planes don't even run on jet fuels. High bypass planes can't even make clouds when we clearly see them making clouds every day. Let me know in the comments. But now you've been informed. Knowing is half the battle. And with information comes power. With power comes great responsibility. So please use that power to attack ideas, not people. Love you, mean it. Cut my outro.